we basically have been told, however you want to slice it, that we have no claims we can bring against any parties. And we've been dismissed out of court.
Well, now, are there any international courts that have looked at these kind of things and that could perhaps take this case and might have jurisdiction and get some kind of a settlement through international law on the chemical companies?
Well, it's interesting. We've thought about that. There's a international court called the International Court of Justice. You may recall some time ago, the United States was sued by Nicaragua for violations of international law. I don't exactly know the details. And the International Court of Justice found against the United States and in favor of Nicaragua. The United States, at that point, said, we're withdrawing from the court. We don't recognize the jurisdiction of that court over our foreign affairs, over our foreign policy, and therefore nothing came of that. So there's really no viable world court or world body that we can go to now from a legal standpoint and bring a case. The only case that could be brought was a case here in the U.S. by the Vietnamese under the statute called the Alien Tort Claims Act, which allows foreign nationals to sue in the United States for torts that occur. But the caveat is it has to be based on a well-established customary international law principle, and the court has said that principle wasn't established at the time of the Vietnam War, and that's why they dismissed us. We think they're wrong about that. We think they're dead wrong. And the way they get to the conclusion is they twist the facts. They say this is a case about whether the U.S. government or these chemical companies could provide an herbicide that could be used to defoliate. And the law is basically very clear that simply using an herbicide to defoliate does not violate international law. This wasn't just an herbicide. This was an herbicide that contained a poison that was both unnecessary to the job of defoliation, was present in excessive and avoidable amounts, and was present primarily because of the greed of the chemical companies, because they were told by the U.S. government, we will buy all the Agent Orange you can produce. And so the chemical companies blew through any kind of accepted industry standards of safety and produced this product at a speed that resulted in a byproduct of dioxin being present. Had they followed accepted industry standards at the time, not just looking back, but at the time, it wouldn't have had dioxin in it. But because they were motivated by greed.
But is this one of these situations where it was a nod and a wink by the U.S. government wanting to use Agent Orange, which was then enriched with dioxin, as a more treacherous weapon, knowing down the road that they could point the finger elsewhere?
Well, there's no question. There's no question that there were people within the U.S. government who were aware of the dangers, were aware of the psychological value that this defoliation campaign would have, they thought it would have on the hearts and minds of the Vietnamese people. So in addition to defoliation, this was about a psychological effort to beat the Vietnamese into submission. Of course, it was unsuccessful, as we know, but there was clearly an understanding that this would have a psychological impact on the Vietnamese, and it did. And in addition to a serious medical impact, it is estimated reliably by looking at the government's own flight paths of the planes that sprayed Agent Orange, that up to 2 to 4 million Vietnamese were directly exposed over a 10-year period to Agent Orange. That is, if you're looking for a weapon of mass destruction, that is a weapon of mass destruction, and that is felt today in Vietnam by second and third generation children of the people who were exposed. Because what dioxin does is that it destroys the chemical makeup of the body, and you begin to, when they're reproduction, you develop children who are sick, who have spina bifida, who have birth defects, who have cancers, and it's in a sense a terrible gift that keeps on giving.
Before we have to go, is there a further appeal that you can take?
Well, we are going to ask the full Second Circuit to reconsider the decision of the panel, the group that decided it was a 3-judge panel from that court. We are, at this point our legal struggle is an uphill one, obviously. But we're going to file that. If we lose that, then we will file an appeal in the Supreme Court, the U.S. Supreme Court. Now, we're not overly optimistic on that either. But it's important to keep fighting the struggle, because it's a moral and just struggle that has to be done. And if we lose in the legal venue, we will take this issue to the political venues. We're meeting with Congress people. We're meeting with non-government organizations. There is some interest by different foundations to fund definitive studies of the effect of dioxin on the Vietnamese people. And so we will not let this issue die.
Jonathan Moore, thank you for joining us in the INN studios.
Thank you so much for having me.